Hello ladies and gentlemen, my name is Andrew Stott, I'm the Emperor of Stomaria, and today I want to discuss how we're developing Stomaria's economy. So for the sake of our newer viewers out there, I did want to quickly run through what we consider to be a micronational economy and how Stameria is structured, because those two things are quite important when discussing this particular topic. I have covered these before in some form or another in previous videos, but again, it is quite important for this video, so I will have to sort of go through this first. So in terms of micronational economies, what are they? So we consider a micronational economy to be not much more than anything that a private individual can do or activities an individual can engage in, but with a micronational wrapper around it, if you like. So in terms of livestock or fruits and vegetables or making furniture or providing a service to someone, these are all things that an individual can do, but in a micronational setting, that's sort of what constitutes a micronational economy. It's about how to generate revenue for the project rather than worrying about things like, inflation and gross domestic product and all the rest of it. Things like macronational economies take into consideration. It's different from micronation. It's more like a private small private business. So that's the first thing to mention going forward, because that's quite important to understand. And the structure of Stameria is also important when discussing this particular issue, because it's a very central theme to it. So the Empire of Stomaria is a federal monarchy, and that means that the provinces, the protectorates, the associated states, the observer states, these are all territories that make up the Empire of Stomaria. And protectorates and associated states in particular are something I want to focus on in this video, because those are types of territory that are governed by the highest authority of another micronation. And just to re-emphasize, the Empire of Stomaria is, in part at least, intended to be a micronation of micronations. So other micronations, the leader of those other micronations, the highest authority of those other micronations, they can join Stameria and integrate their micronation into the Empire of Stomaria as an autonomous part of Stameria. Something that I think people get confused by, because I think it is something that a lot of other micronations do, is that we're not looking to build a homogeneous micronation in the sense that everyone has to adhere to the same culture, the same customs, the same form of government. Each micronation is largely, like I say, autonomous. It can do its own thing by and large without much interference from the central governing body of Stameria. The kind of empire that we're looking to build is one of trade, it's one of enterprise, it's one of commerce. That's what we're looking to build, and that's why integrating micronations in that way is important to us. So we're not focused on, changing your flag, your language, your identity. You can still form a part of Stameria as, as an autonomous part of Stameria, as your own semi-independent sort of kingdom or republic or whatever you might be. But that's something I just wanted to mention going forward, because again, this will be relevant to this discussion. And so with those sort of points out the way, I just wanted to delve into a bit more about how we're developing Stameria's economy, why we're developing Stameria's economy and what our plans are for the future. So the reason that we're building a micronational economy in the first place is because we're looking to attain a sort of de facto independence. What I mean by this is that a lot of micronations, they think, I've set up a micronation, so I am now sovereign, or I will eventually be sovereign. And history tells you that micronations, certainly in the modern era, they're not sovereign entities. They've never become sovereign entities. They've never even come close to becoming sovereign entities in their own right. And so a more realistic goal, a more feasible goal, is to work to find ways in which you can become less reliant on the macronation in which you're based. So providing your own energy, supplying your own water, growing your own food, ways in which you can mitigate your involvement with the macronation you're a part of. Not so much in an isolationist way, but in such a way that you could justifiably say in a situation where, things went belly up for whatever reason, call it an apocalyptic event of some sort, that, bar any sort of violent takeover, you'd be all right. You'd be able to sustain yourself and your community. And I suppose that's what I'm sort of driving at. Is that if you take everything away, if you take the infrastructure, the macronational infrastructure away, then what are you left with? And would it be enough? That's the sort of the thinking that we have. So that's the reason, the rationale for developing a micronational economy, for building the trading network between other micronations within Stameria, and to a lesser extent outside of Stameria, but certainly prioritising the micronations within Stameria. Now, one of the most immediate issues is that micronations, of course, are far and few between. But more pressing than that, even fewer develop what we would consider to be a micronational economy, or a sustainable or worthwhile micronational economy at least. And even fewer of those still develop micronational economies that go beyond an agrarian economy. Now, there's nothing wrong with growing fruits and vegetables and having livestock and all the rest of it. The issue is, if everyone is doing that, then what is there left to trade with? If everyone's growing carrots and potatoes and has chickens, then why would you need to engage in some sort of trade with another micronation? Because they have exactly the same thing. The other issue with developing an agrarian economy and staying focused solely on an agrarian economy is that it's not a very it's quite difficult to engage in trade just using fruits and vegetables and livestock and things like that, because they're perishable, because there's issues with international trade. Sending fruits and vegetables is a bit of a no-no when it comes to international exchanges. So I can't send a bag of potatoes or something to Argentina, a micronation in Argentina, for whatever reason. Because obviously it's not just a case of fruits and vegetables being one of those things that you can't necessarily send internationally, but it's also one of those issues where it's perishable. So what if it takes a month to get there for whatever reason? It's delayed and everything. That's all just rotten when you get there. It's not very practical in that sense. So I think the first thing to highlight is that the type of micronational economy matters, but also geography. And this is where the Kingdom of Wayward sort of steps in, because the Kingdom of Wayward is an associated state within the Empire of Stomaria. They form a part of Stameria. In fact, they were our first territory, because they consist of private freehold land. And they have quite a decent advantage over most other micronations, certainly that I'm aware of, in terms of developing a micronational economy, because they have quite a variety of what you might call industries to work with. And I just want to go over some of those industries over the course of this video and explain what we have done, what we're going to be doing, and what we hope to do in the future. But before I delve into all of that, I just want to say that I think it revolves around three primary issues, this whole micronational economy business. And it's revolving around the goods, the medium of exchange that you're using, and the number of people that are engaged in that. I think those are the three sort of topics that I want to discuss more at length, because those are issues that do matter. So I've already touched on goods a little bit, in the sense that I think focusing too heavily on an agrarian economy can be quite detrimental if you're looking to engage in a trade network with other micronations, only because other micronations that are developing their own economies are likely to also have an agrarian economy, and so the exchange is likely to be quite minimal because you're likely to be looking to produce the same stuff. So trying to find ways in which you can produce or offer something else, I think, is quite important. I'm not going to go into too much detail here as to what that might entail, but it is just something for people to think about going forward. You know, are you going to provide furniture? Are you going to provide logs? Are you going to provide a building service or a web design service or something to engage in that transaction? So that's something you've got to think about going forward. In terms of the medium of exchange, this is where Stameria is very much the conduit between micronations and establishing this micronational trade work, because we're strong believers in the use of sound money and our opposition to fiat currency, and other micronations that feel the same. So if they want to no longer use the macronational currency that they would typically use. So for example, if you're based in the United Kingdom, maybe you don't want to use the pound sterling anymore. If you're based in the United States, maybe you don't want to use the dollar. If you're based in Europe, you don't want to use the euro, so on and so forth. So what are the alternatives? The first alternative that a lot of people turn to is micronational currency. And this causes, it has a myriad of its own problems. It's virtually no different from a macronational fiat currency, except a micronational fiat currency has no value to start with. No one would accept it. You know, if you print off some bits of paper at home and say, this has value, I want, 6 chickens and 4 cows for these bits of paper that I printed off at home, that's not going to happen, is it? So again, that's where it falls flat on its face pretty quickly. I mean, a lot of micronations, they try to peg it to the macronational currency that they're based in. So, in the United States, you might print off some bits of paper at home, cut them up, laminate them, do whatever you want, and give it to people and say, this is you can give this back for $1 or something, but then you may as well just use the dollar. There's no real point in having that sort of exchange. If it's just 1 unit for 1 unit, and both of those units are fiat currency, and both are going to be inflated into oblivion, then it's just pointless. So after that, a lot of people turn to gold and silver, which is what we did. And or other sort of metals. Copper is probably another common one. But certainly sort of metals, something with intrinsic value, or commodity money. And that's a route that we went down. But for those micronations that want to go further than that, because obviously you can just buy gold and silver bars and coins and rounds of any sort of denomination and size and purity and all the rest of it. But what we've done is we've created our own micronational money in the Stamerian stater coins. So these are pure silver coins and will eventually be pure gold coins, which have the name and the symbol of Stameria and other relevant micronations and people on them, or will have on them. The first coins that we had minted are what I typically call Wayward coins, just to keep it simple, only because on the front of it is the Star of Stameria, the Empire of Stomaria, the weight, the purity of the metal, and all the rest of it. And on the reverse is the Kingdom of Wayward, and got their symbols on there to mark and to honour the fact that they were the first territory in the Empire of Stomaria. So that's the reason that we have that sort of coin design. But more coins will eventually be minted in various other denominations and various other weights, not purities, but various other weights, and they'll have various other symbols on them and other names of, maybe myself, Samantha, Eleanor, Kingdom of Norwick, another micronation, maybe King Raoul's head on it eventually at some point. It's just anything that's relevant to Stameria will have minted on coins is the idea. But the difference between a Stamerian stater coin, a silver Stamerian stater coin, or a gold stater coin, compared to other sort of fiat currency or micronational fiat currency bits of paper you printed off at home, is obviously that you can take that silver at face value. You can say this has value because, you know, people will accept it has value. The spot price of silver, for example, is about 50 pence a gram. These 5-gram coins that we have, these 5 stater coins, you can slap that down, maybe not necessarily to a bullion dealer, but certainly to someone that's dealing with, I don't know, scrap metal or something, and it will have value. You can't take micronational currency anywhere and say it has value. That's the difference. So the Stamerian stater coin is very much a conduit, or is intended to be a conduit between micronations within Stameria. So Micronation A and Micronation B both form a part of Stameria, and one micronation produces a lot of carrots, and another micronation, Micronation B, they produce a lot of timber. And you know, Micronation A goes, I want some timber, and Micronation B goes, well, I don't really need carrots. What do you do? So Micronation A just pays for the timber, the lumber, whatever they need, using Stamerian stater coin. And then Micronation B has Stamerian stater coin, which they can go to Micronation C and buy cabbages, because they want cabbages, they don't want carrots. So that's why you need a medium of exchange, something that everyone agrees has value, something everyone agrees is something that you can exchange goods for. That is why money came about, and that's why eventually currency came about, because you can't have a sophisticated society, I don't think, certainly not in the modern sense, if you're just using basically an equivalent of barter. So you do need that medium of exchange. It just depends on what kind of medium of exchange you're using. And I think a micronational money, a genuine micronational money, is quite an exciting development in that sense, because we are no longer using no longer using macronational currency anymore. So we're not, you know, it's just one more thing that we're reducing reliance on, reducing dependency on. But it's also a case of we don't have to print out worthless bits of paper at home and say it has value, because we know it doesn't, and other people know it doesn't. So we can trade in a commodity money, and a sound money, and you know, that's what the second part I want to just sort of highlight, the importance of this particular topic, because it's something that Stameria goes on about quite a lot, and something I go on about quite a lot, because it is important. And you know, the more you understand about the difference between currency and money, the better. I won't go into it too much here, because I have made videos about it before, but you know, if you want to find out more, just Google the difference between currency and money, or look on YouTube or something, because I promise you, once you know, you can't look at it the same way. Anyway, moving on. So the third thing I wanted to talk about is people, and obviously you can't have an economy without people. So the main drive for us in this sense is to recruit as many citizens as possible and to integrate as many micronations as possible into the Empire of Stomaria. As I said, not in this homogenous way, not in a sense of, you know, changing their culture, their customs, their form of government, their identity, and all the rest of it. It's just more about introducing more people into the trade network. Now, if those micronations don't necessarily have anything to trade, that's not necessarily an issue, because there are things that they can provide. Either they can use the Sumerian status themselves to purchase goods from other micronations, or they can potentially provide services for other micronations. What those services might be, I don't know. It depends on the individuals involved in that micronation. But that sort of integration, that sort of cooperation, that sort of trade network that we're looking to establish, that is something that requires more people involved. At the moment, the Empire of Stomaria consists of the Kingdom of Wayward and the Kingdom of Norwich, as well as Stamerian citizens, what you might call pure Stamerian citizens, people that have simply joined without being affiliated with another micronation. But that's just not enough. The Kingdom of Wayward is a sort of hub at the moment for all of our activity, because they're very close to where we reside, where I reside. And they have a lot going on there. So with those sort of three sort of topics covered, you know, in terms of goods, in terms of the medium of exchange, in terms of the people, about the importance of all three of them and what we're hoping to do with those, we'll discuss a bit more about what's happened already, what's happening, and what's going to happen in the future in terms of developing Stameria's economy. So as I say, the Kingdom of Wayward is very central to this entire topic, because that's where all of our economic activity is currently taking place. or most of it, I should say. I mean, there are, if you want to count it towards the sort of economic activity, then obviously we do generate revenue through our citizens, through our Patreon campaigns, so citizens make pledges through that way, and obviously we do sell merchandise, so we do generate revenue that way. But when I'm talking about developing a micronational economy, I'm going a bit further than that. I'm talking about real world economic activities. And so, like I said, most of those, all of those are currently taking place at the Kingdom of Wayward. So it initially started, I think, for us when the Kingdom of Wayward was incorporated into the Empire of Stomaria as an associated state. One of the first things we did was to purchase chickens, or I think maybe we purchased them slightly before, but the chickens that we purchased from Wayward are being raised at the Kingdom of Wayward, and they're now starting to lay eggs. And those eggs, there's one of two things we can do with them, or one of three things I suppose. We can either sort of incubate, hatch, and raise the chickens, and then sell those chickens. We can take those eggs, we can box them up and put them on Wayward's local market and generate revenue that way, or we can simply eat them. So all three of those options are good for generating additional revenue for the project in terms of engaging in some sort of trade and providing another means of self-reliance. So because we're having eggs at the Kingdom of Wayward, eventually it will get to a point where we won't need to purchase eggs anymore. And again, that's just one small step, one tiny step in the right direction. And that's all it needs to be. It doesn't need to be a wholesale, completely isolationist sort of attitude that you need to have when it comes to this sort of topic. You just need to take small, gradual steps in reducing reliance on the Micronation that you're a part of, and that's just one way of doing it. So that was the first thing that we did, and we are going to eventually sort of develop that a little more, perhaps, potentially buy more livestock, more chickens, but also potentially other kinds of livestock. I know pigs, for example, have been mentioned, but also bees. So we are eventually looking to buy a hive for the Kingdom of Wayward, and we're going to be able to generate honey there, which will be good because not only, again, we can put the honey on the local market, we can use it to trade with other micronations, we can consume it ourselves, we can go further and use it for medicinal purposes, we can put it in honey mead or something like that. There's avenues there, and that's something we're going to be looking at as well. But at the moment, our primary focus is on these pine trees. So there are, dozens of pine trees at the Kingdom of Wayward. Some of them have fallen, down into each other. Some of them are sort of almost standing deadwood, and are quite dangerous. And what we've done is the imperial family has actually paid to purchase some of these trees. We're taking them down, or paying someone to take them down, because these are like 70, 80 foot in the air by some accounts, but they're very, very tall trees, very, very dangerous to climb, so we're getting professionals in to take them down and all the rest of it. But the people at Wayward, once they've been taken down, they're going to be logging them for us and storing and seasoning them at the Kingdom of Wayward. Now, once they are seasoned, the same thing applies. We can either sell the kindling or the logs to people in the mainland on their local market, or we can sell it privately to certain individuals. The people at Wayward themselves will be able to purchase them using Stamerian status and utilise it themselves during winter if they so wish. And I say this not because, obviously it is at the Kingdom of Wayward that these trees are, where they're going to be, processed and logged and everything, and they're going to be processing it. But we have paid for that. The imperial family has paid for all of that, paid for the trees to be taken down, and we're paying for the Waywarders, people at Wayward, to log and kindle them. So they are our logs, they are our kindle. It's not just a sort of free-for-all where everyone that comes to the Kingdom of Wayward can just grab a handful and chuck it on the fire. That's not what it's going to be there for. There's certain expenditures that need to be recovered and recuperated. So, and if it is successful in generating enough revenue and generating enough interest in terms of the exchange of Stamerian status, and raising revenue from the mainland, from the rest of the UK, through selling these logs, to people that aren't part of a micronation, then that'll provide additional funding, which we can then potentially use to take down more pine trees. And the idea of taking down these pine trees isn't just because a lot of them are dead and dangerous, but also because the pine needles are very, they're making the forest floor quite acidic, and it's making everything very difficult to grow. So if you've ever been to the Kingdom of Wayward, or if you've seen any video footage or photos, you'll see, a lot of oak trees that are all spindly and twisted and not very healthy, and virtually no plant life aside from what the Kingdom of Wayward has tried to cultivate by trying to make the soil less acidic for things to grow in. So this is all part of that process about, allowing local wildlife to thrive and also utilising the land in a more significant way, because obviously, again, when the pine trees are down, an additional benefit to all that is that there'll be more light, as well as making the soil less acidic. More plants will be able to get more light and be able to thrive that way. So yeah, I mean, those are the sort of primary focuses at the moment for the Empire of Stomaria. So I suppose livestock, honey, and logs would be the first primary resources that we're sort of looking to cultivate or produce or utilize. But also things like, fruits and vegetables. There are fruits and vegetables at the Kingdom of Wayward. Very rarely have they had a really decent harvest. Hopefully that will change this year, and hopefully we'll get involved in that in some way. But again, that's all forms a part of the sort of agrarian economy. And I think when Micronations do get involved in Stameria, I suspect a lot of them will be heavily agrarian focused, like I said in the beginning of this video. So we will have to think of ways of diversifying the economy a little bit, just so there is a reason to engage in trade, so a reason to engage in sort of commerce with one another. And yeah, I think that's about all I wanted to cover for this particular video. It was probably a bit more long-winded than it needed to be, but I just like to have a little chat and sort of go over how things are going, what Stameria is up to, and what our plans are for the future. But yeah, I think that's about cover it for now. So if you did enjoy this video and you wanted to become a part of the Stamerian community, either as an individual citizen or as the highest authority of another micronation, which you would like to incorporate into the Empire of Stomaria, then please feel free to do so through our Patreon campaign, the link of which I shall leave in the description below as always. But otherwise, please feel free to give the video a like, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll catch you in the next one.